And hello again from wjlive, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for Assignment here at the Western Journal. Joining me today, WJ reporter Grant Atkinson. Grant, great to have you. Great to have you watching as well. Believe it or not, we're going to be talking about Ukraine today. But we have some news here that is potentially game-changing. We ran the story early this morning. It got the story performed very well. It was super popular. And Grant, you and I have talked about it a little bit. We talked about it at the show prep meeting earlier today. But essentially, we've got a defense contractor insider, a defense contractor expert, who has been analyzing footage that we've got from the front in Ukraine, footage of Russian vehicles. He has analyzed them, and he thinks that he has discovered essentially a pattern with them that may mean the balance in the war is about to flip. If that sounds odd to you or far-fetched, just hang on, because we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the implications of it. We've got a retired general, he's actually an Australian general, who's been running analysis on this too, talking about what's going to happen in Ukraine if the Russians really do bog down. And well, let's take it past that. Not only bog down, but actually end up on the defensive. What if the Ukrainians actually stop them to the point that Ukraine can go on the offensive and begin trying to push them back onto Russian soil? And he lines out some pretty grim scenarios for ways the Russians could respond to that to try to flip things back to their advantage. But first off, let's lead off with the thing that started all of this. And this is a series of tweets from Trent Telenko. Now, Mr. Telenko used to work as a defense contractor in an auditing capacity. And he started analyzing the footage that was coming back from Ukraine. And he began to notice some issues with, believe it or not, small things can turn into very big things very quickly. He began noticing issues with tires on Russian transport vehicles. And I'm going to walk us through just a few of these tweets. We were talking about this earlier. We could have shown all of them to you, but it's a long series. And I figured just as an homage to Rush Limbaugh, I would just try to read a few of these. Grant and I could talk about them. And, we look forward to your comments on the show as well in the comments thread. So this is Telenko writing. He's referencing a long Twitter thread he ran a day or two ago about how poorly the vehicles were being maintained. He's about to expand on it. He says, in my now widely read thread on poorly maintained, cheap Chinese-made truck tires, again, little things can cause big things, I explained how Russia lost trucks and mobility by not maintaining tires. This loss of vehicles without a shot being fired is referred to as operational attrition. That is, just by operating vehicles, you lose some of them because they break. This gets a lot worse in combat. Each mile traveled by a military truck in war is between 10 and 20 miles of wear. This is simple. I didn't realize this.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty big difference to me. I didn't realize it was, I understand that it would be more wear and tear, obviously, but I didn't realize it was that wide of a gap.
So I didn't either, but he follows it up with the explanation, which is a one-sentence explanation. Truck drivers abuse trucks because they don't want to die, which makes sense.
Yeah, if something's going to take the brunt of the force, you're going to want it to be the truck, not you.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And they will do anything to get out of the line of fire, especially if they are young, cheap conscripts, if they're not professional soldiers. Mm-hmm. So Telenko goes on. He says, I was associated with 3 U.S. Army reset programs, essentially dealing with truck maintenance and how to perform it better. I know this truck maintenance, how could that be significant? Stick with it. I promise you it's going to pay off. Hang on, I'm trying to get to the meat here. Here we go. As the low seniority guy on the line, he says, I got to do my introduction inspection on IED blast damage trucks. And he's talking about when he was over in the Middle East. Mainly the issue that we were running into with our vehicles was that if they were damaged, then they got picked over for parts. There weren't a ton of miles on them, but there were oil leaks, sludgy radiators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the case with an Army that had professional NCOs that lived, breathed, and ate preventative maintenance. That's the U.S. Army. We forced periods of rest for truck drivers. We forced periods of rest for equipment so that they could look it over and repair it. Now we get to the meat of it. None of that is true for the Russian Army. Most of the time, between 2012 and 2022, the Russian Army did not maintain their trucks. The Russians don't have a professional NCO corps, so they're not doing it right now. They're not even doing it now. Now, this goes back to something he observed earlier, which was that it looked like some of the Russian transport vehicles had been parked literally for a year, just in the sun, with the sun dry rotting out the tires. We were seeing photos of completely shredded tires.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen, I haven't been in a war situation, obviously, but we've seen, your own car or your buddy's car. You leave it out in the sun, or you just leave it sitting there for a while. Even you go on vacation for a couple of weeks, you come back, your car looks like total crap. It's got stuff all over it. It's not running. You need to run your car a certain time. If you're going to be gone for a while, you need to get somebody to run it so that it doesn't sit there for too long. I mean, there's natural things that happen to vehicles like this.
And it's multiplied by maybe an exponential factor in war. And so he covers this, and this is where we get to the meat of it. The overriding priority of Russian logistics is transporting artillery and ammunition. Every truck is being sent out in whatever condition overloaded with ammunition. The engines are running white hot, and no one has checked the oil or other fluid levels, let alone has done an oil change in the last 3 weeks. Everything else has real-world consequences with tired drivers. It's not just a convoy chain reaction. Drivers fall asleep at the wheel and do things like fall off of bridges. And we have video of Russian transport trucks that have inexplicably fallen off of bridges. And you think, good gosh, how stupid was that guy? He was not necessarily under fire or anything. He just fell off the bridge. Well, when you're running drivers nonstop and they don't get sleep outside of the truck, well, they will sleep in the truck while they're driving eventually.
And again, this is a war situation. I mean, we experience it enough with, truck drivers, even people who are just delivering goods here in the United States. They need to have breaks.
Yes.
So I'm sure you need to have even more of a break if you're in an active situation like this. It's going to be even more draining mentally.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So not only are they running the truck drivers into the ground, they're running the trucks into the ground, overloaded by artillery ammunition. Trucks thought previously, and running overloaded by artillery ammunition trucks through previously destroyed convoys like this are going to shred even good tires and catch road debris and the pneumatic brake hoses. Plus, driving through and around this takes more time. And then there's the conscript factor, what we were just talking about. Who do you... I wish I had this for you. There is fantastic video of Russian transport trucks pulling helicopters behind them like you might pull a four-wheeler on a trailer. Only there's no trailer. They're dragging the helicopters along the ground. Telenko says that essentially what they're doing is trying to get them out of artillery range, but by the time they get wherever they're going, the helicopters are trash.
Yeah.
And on top of that, after the drivers get out of artillery range, they slow down and take their time dragging the helicopters because that's more time that they're safe. If they're out of the range of artillery, then heck yeah, slow down, take your time, because as soon as I get where I'm going, they're going to send me back within artillery range. And here's where we get to it. The cumulative effect of all these factors leads to horrendous levels of Russian Army truck fleet operational attrition. Short form, 6 to 8 weeks more fighting will deadline the entire Russian Army military truck fleet. Between the end of April and mid-May 2022, the Ukrainian army will be able to counterattack absolutely everywhere, all caps everywhere, because there will be nowhere more than 20 miles inside Ukraine where Russian troops won't be out of food and low on ammunition. So, Grant, we were talking about big things coming of very small things. This started out with Telenko looking at issues with Russian truck tires, and then he looked more closely and realized, good gosh, not only are the tires shredded when they go into the field, they're shredded worse when they get there. Then they panic. Well, if they get there, if they avoid falling asleep behind the wheel and dumping off a bridge, once they get there, they panic, they dump their load or hastily attach a hind, roll it out, destroy the helicopter on their way out. Then they slow down once they're outside of artillery range. They're destroying their truck fleet, which means no ammo drops, no supply lines of any sort. I mean, this will stop them dead, right?
Yeah, I mean, if this estimation is true, I don't know enough about the timeline to say whether or not I think it's accurate.
Yeah,
but,
do they have enough trucks to last that long?
I trust this guy. I mean, I feel like he has done a lot of work in this field, a lot more research than I have done. So if he's saying that these trucks are taking some serious wear and tear, I believe him, and I believe that eventually, whether or not it's the end of April, beginning of May, whatever, I believe that if the war goes on long enough, I certainly think that the Russians are going to have a serious problem on their hands if they don't have any trucks to deliver, like you said, everything they need. I mean, there's not a lot of other options if you don't have any way to get your supplies in there.
So we've talked about this in the newsroom a little bit. Back in the early 90s, many of you who are watching will remember this, as we were transitioning from Operation Desert Shield to Operation Desert Storm, the media loved talking about, because remember, the last big conflict we had was Vietnam. We had small things flare up in Central and South America, but the last big thing was Vietnam. And so the media was hand-wringing and pearl-clutching, and they were terrified. They said, oh my gosh, Saddam Hussein has the 4th largest military in the world. I don't know. Is America up to this? I don't know. And then, of course, Norman Schwarzkopf took over there, and we cut through the Iraqi forces like a hot knife through butter. But we had overestimated, or at least the press had overestimated, the power of the Iraqi military. Grant, I'm wondering have the estimates of the power of the Russian military, have they just been totally overblown?
I think they've been at least a little bit overblown. I think, like you're saying, people forget that having a large army doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great army. You can have a bunch of people who have no idea what they're doing, and they're going out there and they're destroying their trucks and they're doing all these things. And that's not going to be a very effective army. I mean, I still would have guessed that it would be able to defeat the Ukrainian army just because of, how much bigger it is.
Most of us did.
But I do understand how, maybe we gave too much credence to, Russia being this big army, having a lot of resources. Yeah. Maybe, they're not very trained. And that plays a big part in it, that maybe the media, and I think even me and even like the common person in the United States probably didn't realize maybe how little training a lot of these Russian officers and Russian soldiers have.
Well, and that lines up with the reports that we're getting out of Russia that there were young Russian troops who got captured and said, we thought we were on a training exercise. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you mind giving me my cell phone back? I'd like to text my mom. That's what this sounds like. And we've debated this in the newsroom with some of the vets that we've got in here, whether, is this the best Russia can do, short of going to ratcheting up to the next couple levels, which are much, much, much stronger weapons.
Well, yeah, they have that, but I keep hearing people say, like, Russia hasn't sent their best people over there.
Yeah.
Is that true? I don't know. Like, if they have better people, at what point are they going to be like, all right, I guess we need to send the A-team in there?
Right. So exactly. That's what I can't figure out. So if they don't have their best people in there, where are their best people?
Yeah, what are they doing?
And what are they doing? Why aren't they there? And so, like, part of me thinks, oh, well, okay, are they over in the East? Are they keeping a watchful eye on China? Maybe.
Yeah,
but they're not at war with China.
Yeah, I mean, it would be weird to have your better people where you're not at war and your weaker people where you're actually in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
wouldn't make sense to me. But.
Well, and there's been a sort of détente between Russia and China. And one of the things, it is good Trump played hardball with China, but, the old U.S. grand strategy, or part of U.S. grand strategy was for us to be closer to China and Russia than either of them would ever be to each other. So we wanted a better relationship with each of them than they had with each other. And I think probably by being incredibly tough on China, which was good, we pushed the Chinese and the Russians together a little bit. And so then, if that's true, then that argues, why would you have your best troops on the East? What if, we talk about propaganda. What if some of this is propaganda? What if they're not all conscripts? What if an enormous number of the soldiers we're seeing in the bogged down Ukrainian invasion, what if they actually are some of the A-team?
I would say that's very possible, because if you actually have your A-team out here, and this is like the best soldiers that you have, and they look completely incompetent and they're falling off bridges and stuff, you probably would want to put out something that's like, oh, well, this actually is not the best.
Yeah, these are kids.
Yeah.
These are kids. So then that brings up the question. We talk about propaganda, and people have been saying that both sides are really good at propaganda here. What if the Russians are actually the ones reporting that it's Russian kids who are invading? That's some next level psyops.
It is.
So then the question comes up, what happens if the Russians really do stall out? Now, things have kind of they have slowly ground to a halt, but what Telenko's predicting is, he said it, no more than 20 miles away from the Ukraine border. That's the only place they're going to get supplies. What does Russia do if they run into that situation?
I don't know. I feel like they're going to have to, like you talked about a little bit, go somewhat on the defensive. And I don't know how effective Ukraine is able to be, like, offensively. We've really only seen them act in a defensive manner. So I don't know what kind of a force they could put up in an offensive manner against Russia. But I feel like in some ways Russia would be forced to go on the defensive a little bit if they don't have supplies, if they don't have, the things that they need to keep pushing. Then you're forced at some level to kind of drop back a little bit.
So the Russians extended, it's not an olive branch. I'm not sure what you would call it. A nettle, maybe, extended a nettle to the Ukrainians, giving them another chance to get some sort of peace. But of course, the Russians had all sorts of requirements on it and land they wanted and these things. And of course, the Ukrainians rejected it again. That has led to the Russians upping the ante just a little bit and beginning to use thermobaric charges. We're going to talk about those in just a second. But as we're thinking about, okay, what do the Russians do next? That's going to take us to Major General Mick Ryan. Now, Mick Ryan is not he's recently retired. He's not a U.S. general. He's actually an Aussie. He's an Australian general, but educated, of course, in Western military tactics. And he spoke to this. He said, week 4 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Today, I want to examine what culmination, current and pending, of the Russian forces in Ukraine means. We have got a few of these tweets that we can put up for you. We're going to pick up, it's about it's a bunch of tweets. It's a 25 tweet long thread. We're going to pick up on number 12 and just follow it out and talk about it a little bit. This is retired Major General Mick Ryan. Russia may choose a strategy of attrition. Now, we know that the Russians have done this before. That's, they just kind of throw people at the problem until the war machine clogs up with dead Russians.
Which is what you would do if you have a really big army that is not that skilled.
Yes.
They're like, we'll just use our numbers advantage.
Yep, use people. That was, exactly. And the Chinese always had that ability too. So Russia may choose a strategy of attrition. While this broadly works in Russia's favor, it's worth noting that it is fighting alone in a tightening sanction framework. The U.S. and other nations are pouring weapons and resources into Ukraine and can do so for a long time to come. However, many nations facing worse odds have continued fighting long after it made sense to do so. Just because we think that the resources of the West totally outweigh those available to Russia that doesn't mean that the logic is compelling to Putin. That's a good question. Good point. Russian forces might therefore settle for a long-term siege of Ukrainian cities, like Sarajevo, without ground force assaults to capture them. This would be attrition from afar for Russian forces. This might force the Ukrainians onto the offensive against prepared Russian defenses. Then, that goes to your point a second ago, Grant, it would require a change of strategy and tactics from the Ukrainians. They've done very well on the defensive so far. How would they perform on the offensive? What if Russia doesn't? And Ryan goes on saying, this is Major General Mick Ryan, retired. What if Russia does not choose long-term attrition? They may decide to escalate the war. This is where things get interesting, including attacks beyond Ukraine's borders on the bases that are supplying Ukraine's defenders. He doesn't come right out and say NATO bases, but that's an interesting thing to think about. Or it may target border crossing locations where weapons enter Ukraine. What other options does Russia have? It might seek a breakthrough with weapons of mass destruction to destroy a portion of the Ukrainian government and military, or to shock it into submission. Now, the first thing I thought there was TAC nukes, but General Ryan lists a number of other options, one of which we're going to talk has actually just been deployed. Russia has a range of weapons it could use in this scenario. This includes tactical nuclear weapons, radiological weapons, massive drone swarms, which I didn't actually know they had. That's remarkable. Destructive cyber attacks, chemical or biological weapons, or EMP weapons, or a combination of the above. The point is that although Russia has been outfought and outthought by Ukrainians, this only makes them and Putin more dangerous. Do you buy that, Grant?
I do, and honestly, as much as we were just talking about how, they have got this attrition going on with their vehicles, their trucks are being worn down, I understand all of that, but I think in both those scenarios that he just laid out, it's possible that Russia still holds the advantage. Obviously, they're going to start deploying like much higher grade weapons. Then that's going to be a completely different type of war, and I think that they certainly hold an advantage there. And then I think if they go on the defensive, like I said, I don't know. Maybe Ukraine will be very effective fighting offensively, and they'll be able to push Russia back. But if I'm just guessing, I feel like it's a lot easier to be on the defensive, especially when you are the bigger army, when you have resources, although like we said, they may be running out of resources, but they have resources at least right now. I feel like that is a better position for them too. So both those scenarios, I don't think either of them is really like a huge win for the Ukrainians.
So, well, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, so you're totally right. I mean, the Russians they've got massive amounts of resources. The question is, can they get them to the front? Mm-hmm. And then Telenko's argument is, well, you can get about 20 miles past the front, and then that's about it. Now, 20 miles past the front is going to be, I imagine, still totally unacceptable to the Ukrainians. They'll want to beat them back. But how do you beat an army that is that large?
Yeah, if they're just sitting there, and then they can get their supplies up to where they are, and they're just sitting there on the defensive. I mean, that seems like a pretty hard task for the Ukrainians to be able to defeat them.
Yeah, how do you dislodge them? So and that is assuming that Putin would even let that happen, that he would be okay with that. What I think most of us are thinking is that Putin will push harder now. To Ryan's point, he's more dangerous now because of this. So I misspoke a second ago. I said that Ryan mentioned one of the weapons that Putin has begun using, and he didn't. But recently, we have gotten video indicating Russia's using thermobaric rockets. Now, these are also called vacuum explosives or vacuum bombs or fuel air bombs. The difference between these and regular munitions is interesting. Regular munitions, essentially, you've got a bunch of explosive powder that blows up on its own, like black powder or something like that, and gives you an explosion. With a thermobaric charge, what happens is the rocket hits, or the projectile hits. There's kind of an initial explosion where it disperses a bunch of fuel into the air, and then it lights that up. So you get essentially a wave that can actually melt internal organs. Now, if you find that hard to believe, you can go over to westernjournal.com, and we have got a story on that. Russia deploys weapon that can melt internal organs and flash burn anything within 300 yards. If you want an idea of the scale of this, the last time, every now and then a thermobaric charge will act, it's not a charge. There will be a thermobaric explosion in facilities where fuel can mix in the air. The most recent, I think, huge one was in Great Britain back in 2005. I think it was in an oil refinery. I may be making that up. But I do remember the explosion was so severe that it woke people up to 93 miles away. 93 miles.
That's wild.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So the Russians now reportedly using MRLS, multiple rocket launching systems, to rain down thermobaric charges in Ukraine. And I think that shows that they're willing to ratchet up. I think that is the Russians ratcheting up to the next level.
Yeah, I think, that might not have been one of the weapons that Ryan specifically mentioned, but it sounds like it's a pretty damaging weapon. I mean, it's pretty dark stuff, melting people's organs and flash burning things. I mean, I think if they are willing to go to that step, it's not out of the question that they would go to using TAC nukes or something of that nature. I mean, I think this proves that they're willing to take it up a notch at least.
The thing I agree with you, and the thing I thought of when I first read this and I was reading about the way thermobaric weapons work, the first thing I thought about was I think it was Curtis LeMay in World War II, who said, look, we have got to end this thing in Japan. We've got to end the war in the Pacific. We are going to, instead of taking bombers and flying way high and using tons of fuel to get up that high, we are going to fly them as low as we can, and we're going to go through, and we are going to firebomb the mess out of the Japanese. And the whole point of that was to just bring them to their knees and say, look, we don't want any more of this. That same thinking went into using the first nuclear weapons in war, too, which is what we did in Japan, as everyone in range of this knows. So you do wonder, if this doesn't work, what's the next thing Putin does? And is it an EMP, or is it a radiological weapon, or is it a TAC nuke? I still don't know what NATO will do if he deploys a TAC nuke.
I don't know how much power they can really wield over him. Like, what would they do? All the countries that are in NATO are already, sanctioning Russia. They're already against what Russia's doing. What more really is NATO going to do that's going to have an effect on Putin to make him say, oh, I better stop this now? I don't know that they have enough capital to be able to do that.
Yeah, and if he actually were to release a TAC nuke, I don't think, while that would indicate a massive ratcheting up of his willingness to use deadly force, I think it would probably discourage NATO countries ultimately. I mean, they don't want to get involved anyway out of fear of striking some sort of nuclear match. If he does it on his own, I think they're absolutely not going to want to get involved in that.
I mean, you talked about World War II, obviously the Cold War, all those things. No country wants to get into a nuclear war. I mean, that's a terrible idea, and it probably will end in destruction for every country involved. So I don't think that would be an enticing offer for any NATO ally.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. All right, well, that's normally we don't bring you like super in-depth analysis like that, but we were looking at this. Like I said at the top, we ran the story this morning, and it did it was a very popular story. It's the most popular thing we've got today, and so we thought it might resonate with you folks watching as well. As we think about Ukraine, I'll share with you we've developed a partnership with a group called CityServe International. CityServe International is a Christian organization that leverages local churches to help in times of disaster. So instead of going the government route, instead of soliciting donations and giving them to the government, or soliciting donations and giving them to large corporations, CityServe, essentially what they do is they try to raise funds to get into the hands of local churches to minister to people who are fleeing, and in this case, fleeing from Ukraine. They have set up operations in Poland. They are right there at the border. We've been in communication with their comms people who have people on the border, and they have pastors and lay people in churches who are out rescuing people, providing places for people to live, feeding them, trying to protect them from human traffickers. And they've actually had, the last time I talked with them, it was only one, thank God, but they've actually had a pastor who's been killed in the process of doing this, trying to help Ukrainians who are fleeing the war zone. So if you would like to, if you feel led to support them, if you see what's happening on the news and you worry about the folks in Ukraine who are fleeing, you want to meet their physical needs, but you're also interested in meeting their spiritual needs, CityServe is an excellent opportunity. You can go to westernjournal.com/help-Ukraine. That's westernjournal.com/help-Ukraine. You can partner with CityServe, partner with us, and we will help get relief for their physical needs, and we will make sure that the gospel is shared with these people. There is no time, I cannot imagine a time most of those people would be more open to the gospel than right now. This is a golden opportunity to share the truth of the gospel with them. And you can help with that by going to westernjournal.com/help-Ukraine. If you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Rumble, be sure to click the subscribe button. That's going to make sure you get notified when we go live. And we do go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for going to westernjournal.com and reading our pieces, checking us out there. I do want you to know Facebook is throttling us significantly. Had they done this to us a couple of years ago, it would have been an existential threat. We've been able to diversify enough now that it's painful, but we are able to work with it. But we do need your help. One of the things that is letting us work with this is people who have partnered with us and subscribed to support our journalism. If you feel led to do that, you can go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. There's several ways there you can partner with us to help get the truth out and to beat the big tech monopoly. When you subscribe, you provide a way for us to get around that and continue delivering the truth to folks who otherwise would not get it from the establishment media. So thank you. Thank you for supporting us. I hope you'll be able to support CityServe and help share the gospel with folks in Ukraine. That's going to be it for us on this Monday. Until Wednesday, I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor here at the Western Journal. Grant Atkinson, reporter at the Western Journal. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.